Hey everybody, what's up? It is Michelle, and this is Queer Hustle, where we talk to the coolest queer entrepreneurs in the world. And today I'm really excited to have Jade Baranski from Mobilize with us. Now, Jade has done all kinds of cool shit in their career, and I'm really, really excited to dive into all of it. Jade, do you want to introduce yourself to the crew?
Absolutely. Thanks, Michelle. Again, my name is Jade. My pronouns are they, them. And just a little bit about me. I have been an entrepreneur for about 15 years, kind of rolled right out of my first career into starting companies. I have since sold a company, started several new companies. I am a parent of a small, tiny 19-month-old baby. He's the cutest. His name is Elliot Jade. And a tiny puppy, a 9-week-old puppy. Her name is Moose. And then I have a beautiful wife, Amanda, and another baby on the way. So we're just we're doing all the things over here. Super, super into it.
A little bit of a full house situation going on. And oh my
Yes.
gosh, especially during this past year, this has got to have been so difficult to juggle. You're so impressive. And I just fucking love talking to a serial entrepreneur. So many times we're chatting and we're talking to somebody who is pursuing their one passion, and they got into business because they had a subject area passion, and business is the way that they express that. But some of us are just nerds that have a passion for business, period. And so, tell me about that. When you started to get into business, was it about a subject area passion? I know you're a tech nerd, right? Was it about a love of technology? Was it about, I just want to start as many businesses as possible? Where'd you start out?
Yeah. Oh, so good. That's a great story. I'll tell the quick version. So, okay, there I was. I'm going to put myself at, I just turned 19. So I'm working in this semi bougie restaurant in Sacramento. And I have this regular who comes in all the time, and she's just dapper, very well dressed. She doesn't actually look like me, but short hair, super queer. She had her wife. I was like, oh my God, I love them. I love everything about them. And she eats at this restaurant regularly. So in my world at 19, she's loaded. She must be loaded, in a good way, in a positive way. She always orders red wine, and I pour her glass literally to the top. She can barely walk with her wine. Because I'm like, I just love you so much. We're family. Here's all your wine. Maybe 3 months, I want to say 3 months into her being a regular, she comes in normal, and she's like, listen, she walks up to me. She's like, do you want a different job? And I was like, literally no clue. It was like, yes, right away. I have no clue what this woman does, what I'm saying yes to. She could literally run a funeral home. I don't know. Full circle. She actually runs a full service branding, marketing, and design agency that does got real into digital because it was kind of early, right? I'm aging myself, but it's over a decade ago now. So she basically says, come on in, I'll teach you everything, be our office manager, and you'll work your way through the ranks, which I did. Ended as their director of operations after 5 years, ran multi-million-dollar projects, left and traveled through Asia, came back and was like, I got this. She taught me everything. I can do this myself. And that's when, to your point, the obsession with, and I knew it wasn't going to be one type of business, but I did start with the one I knew, right? I started in the branding, design, digital, that world, which quickly took me into technology. So it was a little bit of a rabbit hole effect, but it was a real whirlwind, and it all happened in my 20s. It was awesome.
I love that story. That's something that you would see in a movie or something.
Yeah, it was good.
Where the waiter just gets plucked out of the restaurant.
Yep.
I waited tables for 7 years, and nobody ever plucked me from a restaurant and gave me a Cinderella job. So I'm salty. No, I'm just kidding. I probably was not as good of a waiter as you were. I was just doing it to get through college. I probably was not setting the world on fire with my service skills, but good for you that you were able to get that somebody said, you're so fucking good at this, come run my operations, come assist, and then work your way up. So that's really, really fucking cool that somebody saw that in you and took a chance. I do have so many parallel things in my own story. Somebody saw something in me, and it really gets us to the importance of mentorship. I know that you very awesomely do a lot of work around organizing mentorship within the queer business community. Tell me why you think that's important, or why you want to devote your time and energy to that.
Yeah, so good. So I was super anti-nonprofit for a long time. And I actually started the Queer Business Alliance as a meetup group, which was awesome for a couple of years. We did fun, everything was in person. It was great time. We made lots of pairings, lots of informal mentorships. It was awesome. And then it sort of hit me that one of the biggest disconnects and gaps in mentorship is not in cities like Denver, which is where I'm headquartered. It's in places like Kentucky and Florida, and these like semi-rural, you know, there's not like the cool queer bar to go to meet other cool queer entrepreneurs. Like it just doesn't exist everywhere. So that's where the nonprofit actually kind of came out of, because we knew that we would have to use technology to make those pairings and really start to look at how do we use this digital landscape to really not only enhance like the story of queer entrepreneurship, but like in my case, I didn't know I could do it until I met someone who looked like me, who was identifiable in my world as like, I could be like them. And like, from that moment, I saw it for myself. But before then, like, it was not possible. There was no way I was going to wait tables. I was going to, I don't know, run a restaurant, manage a hotel, something like that. Right. But like that one person in that one moment made the difference for my entire life, like a whole different trajectory. So I'm just really committed that like, that's a contribution that I can be and really show up for what that person did for me. And, you know, your person did for you. Like it takes us continuing that light.
Absolutely. And this is why visibility is so important. I mean, this is the whole premise behind doing QueerHustle too, is to just give a platform for visibility to people so that other folks can look up and say, there's somebody that looks like me doing that thing that I didn't know that I could do. Because like you said, a lot of folks with queer identities feel relegated to specific industries, specific types of work. Like, okay, it's cool for us to be in the arts, but is it cool for us to be, you know, in engineers or what, you know, or whatever. And so it's like so important to show this. So how long ago did you start that, and what sort of outcomes have you seen in people once they've had mentorship this way?
The nonprofit officially started about a year ago, but like I said, there was that informal version. So it's been about 3 years that it's been around, and we have since done lots of informal pairings. We're launching the official like beta mentorship program online Q2 of this year. So it's like perfect time. Everybody should check it out, queerbusinessalliance.org. But informally, so myself, I've hired several young queer folks and not only like mentored them through the, here's how you run a business, like here's the opportunities that I see for you and your passions and like living true to what you want to do. But several of those younger folks have since started businesses. So for me, that's like the ultimate, you know, they worked for me and now they own their own business. And like, that's the story that I believe we need to tell, of like, we can contribute to people who are really powerful and talented, and then also let them go and bring more people and let them go and bring, right? Like it's a cycle. And that's, I think at this point, I've mentored 3 younger folks who have since started businesses. So I feel like, you know, huge win.
I love that story. And I think I saw this quote the other day that said, are you using people to grow your business, or are you using your business to grow people? Yeah, it really, I was like, ooh, that's a happy quote that resonates with me. Because it really is that leadership management is really about helping people realize their potential, and that's going to intersect with what you're doing for a time. And unless they come up and become, you know, a business partner or something like that, then eventually they're going to go off, and we're not salty about it. We're happy that we helped somebody along their path, and they, you know, gave us some of their labor on the way, and there was a win-win situation there.
Totally. Yeah. And the only thing I'd add to that in the context of like something that I've been not grappling with, but like really looking at for myself, is this like difference between like building a network of convenience, like business networking, and like, oh, we're there for each other when it's like easy and kind of fun, compared to this idea of building a network of contribution, which is like all around people like really showing up for one another in like arguably less comfortable ways. You know, like we're gonna have a conversation about something that's, you know, going on in my business that I don't want to talk about, and like you're the person I'm gonna call. Like that's contribution as opposed to that convenience. So like all of those younger folks now, like I know they're in my network of contribution, and they will be for the rest of my life. So it's just such a cool, like, anti-salty way of doing business that I love.
I just love that distinction, because there's so many, you know, people get a bad taste in their mouth when we talk about business networking. It's like, oh God, like, and it's because when it stays at that surface level of like, what can I do for you? What can you do for me? It's not fun. It's not fulfilling. It's not a great interaction. The best interactions, the best networking come from making genuine connections, forging real relationships. And that involves being vulnerable, being transparent with each other. I feel like as you're talking about this, I'm listening, I'm thinking, that's a queer community. We really have a leg up on this, because this is how we navigate socially. We're family for each other, and it gets really real, really fast. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I used to talk about this a lot, like when I was younger in my career, how like me being queer set me up in a unique way in business to like really Like you call it hustle, I call it like power through, like it's all the same stuff, but it's got this like agreed upon, I think, foundation that's authentic. And there was like no version of my business around me that could be fake, because it just like didn't align with who I was and who I had to be, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So like look like me and walk into a room with a bunch of people that don't look like me in any way, shape, or form is like, it's just a unique perspective that now, like, I don't take it as a I'm different or like it's hard or anything like that. It's like an opportunity to show up for the queer community and be like, here we are, and I'm queer all the time, and I don't turn it off. I don't turn it off for the Air Force. I don't turn it off for our state clients. I don't turn it off for anybody. It's like all day, every day, because this is the real deal. And I think that to your point, like, had I not grown up and had to come out and like do the things that I did, it wouldn't have been like, there would have been that, like, I'm going to fake it. I'm going to just look really good. Like, cause I'm also really good at looking good, but I get to like choose between the two. Like I can be fake and look good, or I can just be myself, and that's still great. Arguably much better.
Still look good to me. Okay. For what it's worth, right?
Yeah.
Listen,
thank you.
I think there is this virtuous cycle that comes up. And a lot of times in the queer community, overlap with progressive community, things like that, there can be this stigma or this backlash against making money, getting more powerful. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, the more money you have, the more powerful you are, the easier it is to show up and be like, this is me, deal with it, right? I can walk in a room and be like, this is me, deal with it, because I've attained a certain status level to be able to do that. And when I do that, that makes it easier for people down here that haven't attained that status level to come in and look that same way and act that same way. So like, I very much appreciate that you've gained power and status and money to the point that you can now come in and be like, everybody in the room, fucking deal with it. This is who I am, because it creates that opportunity for other people to be themselves as well. What would you say to people that are, that stigmatize queer folks going after money, going after power?
Oh, I love this one. One of my favorite, so when I first started getting into technology and sales, and I had always sold, right? Because I had a business and I had to sell and have clients and all that, but it was like referral based and it was all very soft. Yeah. Like my personal relationships grew the business, which is not a great exit strategy, but we'll talk about that later. Yeah. On the, back to what we're talking about. So in the context of really looking at me making a ton of money for myself, like I had to break through a ceiling called guilt. And there was another ceiling that was actually more like my family and like the way that I was raised looked at people who had tons of money as like better than, and really stigmatized that outside of the queer community. So there's like queer guilt of like, no one I know is rich. That's queer, other than like Prince. I don't know. Sometimes we talk about that at QBA. We're like, who do we know that's a gazillionaire that's queer? We're like a couple people, and they're celebrities. They're not like normal, your like best friend usually isn't rich. So I think that like that stigma, having to break through the ceiling, was getting really uncomfortable, and having the conversations, a lot of it with myself, but with my partner, with my mom. I've had like deep, intense, arguably like painful conversations with my mom about money, because I'm like, this was just true for me. It was wrong to have tons of money, and I don't even know why. I can't connect it back to like you said this, it's like the blue collar American thing. Like it's just bad to have tons of money. And now it's like, someone said to me, which is what I was going to say at the beginning, someone's going to get the money. Like someone is going to get the money. So why not you? Because what you're going to be able to do with that money, and the commitment that you're going to have to the community and what you're up to and this nonprofit and like really creating something in the world, is unique. So like, go get the money. And that was my coach, who I adore and like highly, highly always recommend. Like once you're up in business and you're doing it for real, get a coach.
Get
someone that will make you uncomfortable. Yeah.
If you are a coach, get a coach. If you're not a coach, get a coach. Everybody get a coach. This is
get a coach. The best.
Get a fucking coach.
So good. Yeah.
Please. Yes. We cannot say that enough. I, totally identify with what you're talking about. I grew up working class in Oklahoma. Having money was both revered and stigmatized. The richest person in my town was like the dentist or whatever, right? Like if you had a 2-story house, I thought, man, you're balling. Like your folks are so rich. They bought you like a used Buick LeSabre, like, holy shit, like you're so fucking cool. And there's this mix of like both, wow, it's aspirational, we're temporarily embarrassed millionaires, but also the suspicion, and we don't trust people that got rich. I think we're like resolving cognitive dissonance, because if rich is good and poor is bad and we're poor, then that means we're bad. So we can't have that. So then we have to do some mental gymnastics to be like, rich must be bad and poor must be good and I'm good. You know, and
and in the end, like none of it makes any sense, and we made it
it's
all
in the
up.
lizard brain, right? Like subconsciously, these are the stories that play out when you bring them front and you look at them and you examine, you go, that doesn't actually make sense. It's actually not true. That's really ridiculous. But the things that we plant in our subconscious, especially from childhood,
or just they get planted, right? Like we don't need, it's not like a conscious, we're not like, oh, I'm gonna plant that being rich is bad. It's just like it's a pattern that happens over time, and then by the time you're in your 20s, you're like, it's wrong. I'm not sure why. It's just wrong.
Right.
Can't do it. Yeah.
Right. So I'm glad you're breaking that mold, breaking that stigma, and to a large effect. I mean, you're building and selling companies. So I want to talk about that because I mentioned before we started recording, there's so many folks in our space that really kind of almost look down on having an exit strategy. And when I bring up with my clients and prospective clients, hey, what's your exit strategy? Or let's think about an exit strategy. I'm often met with early on, like this resistance of like, what do you mean? I'm just doing this because I love it. Like, what kind of asshole would build something to sell it? And like, that's wrong. You know, it's like, I just,
like, this kind, no.
This kind right here.
Yep.
Tell us why it's good to build something to sell.
I mean, it was a journey for me, for sure. So I started my first company that was the branding technology, right? We did like websites and web apps and mobile apps, and it was great. And I got really clear about 3-4 years in that like the Groundhog's Day that was my life of services was never going to end. Like the hustle, the never ending questions, the pushback, I mean, everyone in services knows that the client's always right. Like that's just the conversation that we're in. And I didn't agree with it. I was like, it's not true. They're not right.
No, if they want an orange and purple website, like they're wrong, you know?
Right. Like you really want the tiniest little thing for your logo icon and like, you're wrong. And after about halfway through, so I sold it 8 years. So I did my stint, like I did my fair share of work. And to your point, like, I hustled my ass off for that business. Mm-hmm. I got it to the over $1 million point. It was like very, very satisfying to have succeeded in that business. And it was not bringing me, like to say it wasn't bringing me joy is an understatement. I was miserable. Mm-hmm. I was like, if I have to talk about one more why you shouldn't do an app or why it costs so much money to build this type of tech, like it just gets to the point where it's like grating. Mm-hmm. And I purposely did create the business to be sellable. Like the name was sellable, the brand itself was built around the culture and the values. So like it could really go to anybody. Mm-hmm. And it's named JoyLab. It's still around. I sold it. So you can look it up. It's amazing. And the new team, and one of the reasons why I think selling businesses is a huge win is like they were new in business. They didn't have that, you know, ecosystem of clients. They didn't have the biz dev pipeline set up. They didn't have like none of that stuff that took me literally like 4 or 5 years to get good. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I can hand you this beautifully packaged, well-oiled machine that you can grow into your own baby and you can love it the way that you're going to love it. And mm-hmm. I'm going to move on and do something that lights me up that's in this world of technology and communications and creating access through that. And I get to do more stuff with my life. Because I could do that stuff forever. And it was like at the point where for me, I was like totally miserable was the huge red waving flag of like, you got to get out of this business. And I started really looking like, what is it going to take? Mm-hmm. Operationally, cleaned everything up, book a business, got it set, moved all the clients to retainers. I mean, it was like a highly sellable business by the time I sold. And it was like, please buy, please. And I had multiple, opportunities to sell, and the alignment of the people was really important for me. Like I said, like they now have this thing that they can just go and run with. But now, like the 2 businesses I own now, it's like, I know the exit strategies and they're both about 5 to 7 years. And I feel great about that mm-hmm. because like building wealth and creating business opportunities for other people is part of what I'm up to.
I love that. So many people, when I bring this up initially, they're surprised by the question. They're like, I can do that? I can sell this one day? And it's like, well, yeah. So let's start there. Yes. But they're not thinking about that at all. As they're really kind of thinking of starting a business as creating a job for themselves, or maybe as creating jobs for a few other people, but they're not really thinking about that. So obviously we design a business totally differently when we're thinking about building a sellable business. What would you tell people that are just starting to get their heads around this concept for the first time, that this is a possibility?
Oh, yeah. That's really good. I'm going to do 3 things. 1, This is my favorite. Do not name your business after yourself under any circumstance.
Thank you.
It reduces said sellability dramatically, and you'll have to do a rebrand, and it's not worth it. Don't do it. Don't name it after, even if the domain is available. Doesn't matter. Don't do it. The second thing is really looking at, like, this is when I started to transition. This is one of the things that like hit me in the face hard, was like my team, the team that I built around me, had to be based around some kind of ROI. Like I had to get serious about the data and the metrics. And like, that was the time where we switched to billable hours and we started tracking everything. And it was like a little bit of poke your eyeballs out, but a lot of business opportunity that otherwise wouldn't have been available. I couldn't have shown the growth of the company or the metrics or how much money we were actually making had I not done that. Mm-hmm. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing, and this has come up recently with folks that I know growing their businesses, is your first hire is your most important.
Yes.
You have to you have to be so aligned with that first person you hire, because it is, like, for me, it was a make or break. I've seen it make or break lots of other businesses at that stage. And it's like, really hire someone better than you. Let go of the, like, you have to be the best and like, this is your baby. And like, you have to be willing to set that aside. It can still be true. But like, for me, I hired a director of ops who also did biz dev. And that was like the for my business. And it like, then we started hiring more and more and more. And we had 18 people at the height of that agency. And it was amazing. Like, I was not the smartest person in the room. I didn't do everything. I wasn't the best at any of it. And that was intentional.
I love that.
So
I always think that point so hard. Like, hire people smarter than you. You're not the boss because you're the smartest. You're the boss because you took the financial risk. Hire smarter people and then do what they think you want to do. I love that you found a unicorn, by the way, that could do both ops and biz dev.
That was magical. That was magical.
That is fucking magical. Don't folks out there, don't expect that person's just going to walk across your path. But if you find them, grab them.
Totally.
And this, it kind of calls back to your story about getting brought up from service, from being a server. And you see what now, as a server, you're probably thinking, oh my God, how did this happen? This is magical. Now that you're a boss, you can turn around and go, oh, I see, with your mentor, what she saw, you see this person that is attentive, that's great at building relationships, that is, a hard worker, that's diligent. And you go, wow, you would make a great entry-level ops person. And then you have the potential to grow up into, and so we can, like, it's clear now we can see, oh, here's the traits that translate.
Yeah. So good. Service industry in general. I'm all about it.
Absolutely. So one of the things we talk about hiring with our clients is it's like buying art, right? Like there's, when you have a space on your wall and you're like, I know when I go to the fair, whatever, in the before times, we used to go to like the art shows and I'm going to see the thing that fits in that spot. And I'm just going to know that's what goes in the, in the dining room. And hiring can be similar. Obviously, we want to be intentional about creating the roles we want in the order we want at the timing we want. But sometimes it's just like there's this person I know that I need, and I'm going to be open so that when I come across them, I'm attuned to, oh my God, that's what I want. Have you had that experience?
That was I was like, oh my God, that's my CTO.
Yeah.
Which we now own the businesses half and half. I always own businesses outright myself. And he came into my world about 4.5, maybe 5 years ago now. And we worked on a project together. And I was just like, when you meet someone and you're like, I don't even know how to speak the words to say how impressive you are to me, and how like to my yin, you're the yang. And like, we have no shared skills, literally not, like no overlap. We've since grown some overlap because it's necessary. But it was definitely one of those moments where it was like, this will really take something for me to, be vulnerable enough to even consider having a business. Like I had a couple of business partnerships ish that like just weren't great. And I think that happens early on in your career. Like you're testing the waters. You're like, this seems like such a cool opportunity. And it turns out like it's the worst plan. Like don't get into e-commerce. No, if you have a great idea, go ahead and do it. But a lot of times it's like a great idea, but it's really like not that executable. Right. So when I met him, it was like, I see the future. Like I see us selling these huge projects. I see us getting into technology that doesn't exist right now. Like I saw all of it when I met this guy. And since like those things have mostly come to fruition, and him and I are like FFs, like ride or die. Like I would do anything for this person who, like, when I met him was like some random dude who ran a small tech company who's like very, very smart, but kind of introverted. Like we don't seem like yin and yang, but turns out like if you look for that and you really see like this person adds all of this to my like what I'm up to creating, and you know what you're trying to create, it just is like, I mean, I knew within probably 5 minutes of sitting down with him that we would own a business together.
I love that. It's a little bit like getting married to go into business partnership. I know it's a lot like getting married. I mean, there's 100%. A lot of legal stuff that's hard to undo. And we said, you know, God, you gotta date before you get married. You gotta know you can work with this person. But sometimes you do just really get that powerful feeling of, wow, we can do more together than either of us is ever going to do apart. And that's the spark, you know, that we're looking for, right? When we want to make those kind of mergers. So it's cool because I'm like you. I'm very guarded about like no one getting my equity. I worked my ass off for all of this. You can just like walk up here and take some equity. You got another thing coming. But sometimes you meet somebody and you're like, well, I'm not going to be able to do what we would be able to do together.
Yeah. And I like, to your point, not that I was guarded, but I was smart. Like we had a multi-year ramp up of him gaining equity. We had like a profit share in advance of equity. We had metrics that had to be hit. So like, as much as I had to like open up, I was still like very business protocol-y about at least like the relationship, to your point, because we had a third partner at one point that we had to buy out. And that's like something you never want. I don't recommend.
Yes, I
do not recommend.
Yes, sometimes hard to avoid, but this is one of those things that you know, it's like we call them Girl Scout badges around here, which just means like you went through this stupid fucking thing and you got your Girl Scout badge, like you got your lawsuit badge and you got your, you know, early on it's like your first fire someone and first, you know, you earned that badge. So yeah, those things do come up. And they're scary as we get big, but here you are living to tell about it after having lived through like all kinds of stressful shit. I do want to talk about how it does get harder and it does get more stressful, because I think sometimes there's a rosy picture painted of, you when you're first starting out, you think something like, oh my God, when I make my first $1 million in business, I'll be able to sit on the beach all the time and my, you know, and I'll have $1 million in the bank. And it's like, friends, $1 million in your business does not mean $1 million in the bank. Let's get that clear. Secondly,
yes,
at $1 million, you're running $1 million a year business. You are now a professional octopus. Congratulations. Like your job is doing this. You know, it's a really, really hard stage. And it's not until you get much bigger, you know, quite a bit bigger, that you really get into that, like, I can sit on the beach while the whole thing runs without me. Let's be realistic about that. What are you going to tell people that are looking at this? I mean, like, cool, in 3 years, I'm going to be.
So good. The beach is in my plan. Yes. It is in my plan. Like I have plans for that.
Yes. One day.
Right. I'm now in like my mid to late 30s. So I've got like my early 40s, mid 40s. That's like, I'll be on the beach. But the thing, like realistically for me now, the decisions that I make compared to like 10 years ago in business, I make one decision that can, bring in, let's just say like a multi-million-dollar, multi-year contract. And it's literally based on me saying yes or no. We're going to either go for that or we're not going to go for that. And I think the biggest thing is, it's not really trusting myself. Like I have to trust myself, but what I found that's even more important in like how I've created my team, like I have a director's team around me, is like getting everyone's feedback and being really open to it. Like I will assess everything everyone says. I'm a human being. I will assess the shit out of it. In fact, I will make it all good or bad and right and wrong. I'll do all that stuff. But when we're like looking at a huge business opportunity or decision or choice, like really taking the time to slow down and get like, this is why I hired these people. Like, give me all of your feedback, all of your opinions, all of your assessments. And then I'll essentially take that and make a decision. And really, for the most part, I'm going to take like the summary of the group and put some of my logic on top of it. And that's going to be the answer. Compared to like, I don't know, bringing in a $20,000 contract or building out a pipeline for an automated sales campaign, like 1 million times harder to do. And not hard, like hard, but like you have to slow the fuck down.
Yeah.
You have to be so intentional that like the entrepreneurial hustle side of things, like you have to not get into that space. Because there are some decisions I now see where I said no in my younger career where I'm like, man, if I had just thought that through, that was such a great opportunity. But I was like, oh, it's too much, or it's too big, or it's too soon, or whatever, too something. And I just wasn't willing to like take the risk and slow down. And now it's like, okay, when those things come up, slow the fuck down, bring your people around you. And like, I have my 4 people who are not in my company, who are like my trusted mentors and confidants, who I'm going to call them when it's big. I'm going to call them. And that's the stuff that like, I didn't do that when I was in my 20s. Like there were no people, I didn't run anything by anybody. And it did feel like hustly and busy. It felt very busy, but it wasn't the same level of like, okay, I could make a decision that's going to create wealth for 50 people that I'm surrounded with, like that are real people that I've hired, or not. I'm either going to do that or I'm not, based on this decision. Like it's just a different, and I don't work more now. That's not the case. But the time that I spend working, I would say takes up so much more of my brain space and focus and intention that it's like not the same. I could do a to-do list, like, oh, I love a good to-do list. I could check that
it's like
all
a break
day.
To have a to-do list. You're like, oh,
yes,
sweet.
I love
I
it to
take a break and just check off some shit off this list. But
exactly. But when I'm looking at like strategic priorities and like taking the time to think and slow down, it's just a different mindset, and it really does take something. It's much easier to do a to-do list. Much easier.
Absolutely. Look, we got to grow as people to grow a business. The same person that really successfully grows a business from 0 to $1 million a year is not the same person that really successfully runs a $5 million business as the CEO. Those are different people, different personality traits. And if you want to do both, you have to start out as one and kind of evolve into the other. And that's really, really hard to do. I have a lot of clients right now stuck right around that $1, $2, $3 million a year mark that that have to evolve into somebody different or find somebody else to run the company. Because what worked when it was just you and your assistant who knew exactly what you meant when you said do the thing is not going to work when you're running a team of 20
it people. Doesn't scale. It doesn't. You don't scale. Turns out
the shit you were holding only in your head does not scale.
Truth.
To get that out of your head and into some systems. So thank you so much for being here with us today from Mobilize. We're so grateful for all of your work in the community, everything you're doing to get us organized, get startup people matched up with mentors, talk to people about how it's cool to make money, it's cool to sell, it's cool to build wealth, and it's cool to create the life that you want and be as open and authentic and visible as you can be while you're doing it. So such an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.